All right. Well, welcome back to today's episode of the Who We Are podcast with your host, Zach Molock. That's me. And today I have a guest. Her name is Kirsten Osborn. Thanks for being here, Kirsten.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So before we dive in, I'd like for you just to introduce yourself to our listeners, telling us a little bit about who you are, what you're passionate about, and why you're here today.
So I have a background, I would say, in theater, and that's kind of what I'm looking to pursue professionally as well. I'm passionate about all sorts of creative pursuits, can alternate between several different mediums, but am most passionate about acting and writing. And I'm here today to shed some light on autism and ADHD and just what navigating the world looks like for someone with autism and the challenges and struggles and also, you know, complexities that are sometimes beautiful and fun that
Yeah.
come with that.
Yeah. And I think that's just so important for us to understand that better and to identify some of the misconceptions that we have, which you're going to do for us as well. And I just can't thank you enough for being here. So we'll get right into it. Okay.
Okay.
Can you walk us through your mental health journey from early experiences to where you are now? And what are some of the key moments that shaped your path?
Yeah. So I would say, early experiences with autism were kind of misread as, being overly dramatic, or I was told a lot that I was like a drama queen in classes and such, or just environments where I was responding in an atypical way that I didn't know and no one around me knew at the time were symptoms of autism. And so, when the world kind of responds to you in a negative way, I started to realize what was causing that and suppressing those behaviors, which is a thing called masking.
Mhm.
And it's very common in autistic individuals who don't necessarily have resources or access to care, and who also don't look like, your typical person with autism. And that led to lots of anxiety and depression that forced me to seek, or not forced me, but were the motivating factor behind seeking like therapy around age 15, 16, and kind of up until 23, 24, when I got the autism diagnosis, were that whole period was just like getting tons of misdiagnoses.
So
And
you would say that was your turning point, right?
getting diagnosed.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. A huge turning point was, yeah, around age 22, where I was not receiving proper support for mental health. And I was just pushing myself to so many extremes of like work and school and personal relationships that I was just burnt out. And what's funny about, you know, having a lot of time to rest is that you also have a lot of time to deal with everything that is like coming up under the surface. And there was a lot there. So that time period was very scary, but very revealing and necessary, I think.
So if you don't mind, can you define masking a little more to where we could understand? Because how I'm understanding it is that of a typical mask, like one that you don and you put on so everybody else can see a certain image or persona, right? And
Yeah.
so when I'm hearing you talk about how the time that you had essentially to rest and to reflect, Was that one of the first times you ever took that mask off?
Yes and no. Yes, for a prolonged period of time. And I still mask today, even. It's not like something, it's not always a conscious choice, but it is a means of like fitting in and seeming quote unquote normal, which is to say masking autistic traits like stimming or forcing yourself to make eye contact even if it's uncomfortable for you. And so it varies from person to person, and every autistic individual is different. But masking is something people do even if they don't have autism, and a lot of women are kind of socialized to present or perform femininity and be polite and agreeable, even to their at their own expense or to their detriment. And so it kind of functions like that. And yeah, so that period was one of the first times where I had time and space and safety to unmask, but then I also have unmasked in periods of high stress, just as a result of needing to cope or expel energy.
Uh-huh. In the questionnaire that I sent you, what you answered back, which was great, by the way, very detailed and impressive. So thank you for that.
Thank
Uh,
you.
but you did mention being misread, mislabeled, and misunderstood for much of your life. What has helped you start to see yourself more clearly through all of that noise?
Yes. So it's not always easy, and I still struggle with it. But I think, turning down the noise on the outside world and turning up the volume on my inner world, which is to say, not seeking, approval or validation for others and, what autism looks like, or just even who I am as a person, and relying on myself. And I think a big thing is just trusting myself and my experiences, because I've had a lot that have made me not, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think in, my darkest and hardest moments is really just turning over to God and asking God for support. And yeah,
Yep. And um, you're a young adult. You're 24. Is that right?
yes,
Yep. So how much of you struggling uh, in the ages as far back as 15 to currently, have you been a Christian that entire time?
yes.
Mm.
I, though my relationship with God has changed over I mean, as it does, right? As relationships do in general. Um, yeah, I wouldn't say I'm like a typical Christian, which I guess is different in how people would define like a typical Christian. But yeah, it's a lot more about my own personal relationship with God than it is, like going to church or things like that. Um,
Well, the key
so
word there is relationship. I think
yes, yeah,
and that is unique to each person. Um, so I'm glad that you know that and that you understand that it's you and God, and
yeah,
I think it's extremely special, and I'm glad that you do know that and um, you identify with that.
yeah,
Can I ask you a question about your relationship with God?
sure.
Was there a moment where you were angry with God and questioned why?
Lots.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, why would you do this to me? Or like, those moments of like extreme turmoil and
Mm-hmm.
just frustration, like why am I like this? Why me, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I mean, it's always misplaced, and I know the answer is like, I know the answer, and knowing something is not the same as like deeply, truly believing it. And so that's also a part of my journey, is just like total self-acceptance and empowerment. Like these things aren't, mental health isn't bad and it's not good. It's not on this binary, It's just a
Mm-hmm.
part of who you are. It's a part of your story. But it's hard to see that all the time, or even like some of the time. But yeah, I think I love when I'm like, I just think it's silly because sometimes I get so frustrated, and then I'm reaching out to God, calling to God, and like there's just this humor that's revealed in the situation, or like a lightness about it. Like when you're like crying and something silly happens and it kind of like removes you from the moment for a bit, that can like ground you. Um, I think I have those moments often that, ease that or lighten that.
Do you feel like you're, and I'm sorry, I know I'm kind of getting off task on these questions, but what you just described was absolutely beautiful. Um, as far as your relationship with God and being able to express that anger, and then how you define mental health. I've never heard it defined that way, and you struck a chord with me. Made me a little emotional, to be honest, just because of how unique it was put, um, or explained rather. Do you feel, because you said that you asked, you went through periods and still may do, as far as questioning God, why, um, but then you talked about acceptance too. Have
Mhm.
you been able to accept that God has made you and designed you very specifically for this purpose, to be able to live with autism and to embrace it and to be empowered and to empower others? Do you feel like that is intentional?
I honestly don't know. I think, being a young person, especially right now, um, a lot of that is I'm still figuring that out, as
Mm-hmm.
far as my ultimate, I guess, desires for like what my life, the work of my life.
Right.
I think that is definitely a part of it. And it's not always comfortable to, you know, look at that and then embrace that. Um,
Maybe
so I don't know.
that's no, you're answering it. It's great. Have you Do you feel like it's brought you closer to God? Maybe I should have asked it asked it that
Oh
way.
yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
that's great.
Yeah,
That's really great. Well, thanks for sharing all that with us. Like I said, I know we got off task a little bit, but thank you for allowing me to
yeah.
ask you those questions. So the next question I have, is about your ADHD. Can you talk about the role your ADHD and autism play in how you experience the world, and how that's influenced your personal and creative work?
Mhm. Yeah, so there is, as I was saying before, there's a whole, autism is a spectrum, right? And every person on it is so different. They have their their own unique constellation of experiences that define it or shape it for them. But I think that what is unique, or what is through line for everyone, is something called bottom up processing, where is you take in like the sensory um, details of your environment first, and that builds your like overall view of it versus like using past experiences to inform the present, which is top down. And so I think, being very detail oriented and sometimes, uh, there's a quote that's like missing the forest for the trees. It's kind of always used in like a negative connotation, but yeah, I don't mean it like that. It's yeah, like missing the forest for the trees, but just, you know, honing in on details.
Mhm.
So I can be very detail oriented, which is a strength, but it also is sometimes, kind of puts me in situations where I'm missing really key details or information in the environment that I'm just not picking up on because I'm picking up on like the way that the light is like flickering or something. So yeah, I mean, I remember being a kid too and like going shopping and being like 30 minutes in, like, we have to go. Like, I can't do this. And I didn't know why, um, until I, had this language to explain that I was, having sensory overload. I was being like way too inundated with sensory information and not processing it as fast or I guess typical that people without autism generally do.
Mhm. And how would that manifest when that sensory overload would happen?
Oh, oh yeah. A lot of the times, or like even like changes in routine or plans that just happened like very spontaneously, those would really upset me. And I think my parents, well, I know my parents thought I was having like a tantrum. Um, and it kind of, I mean, it presents that way from the outside, and on the inside, it's more of it's called a meltdown. And so it's kind of similar to a panic attack in the sense that it's like happening to you versus a tantrum, which is something that you're actively doing. But it doesn't feel the same as a panic attack in terms of like, chest tightness and stuff. It's more like heavy emotions, like the weight of emotions kind of pressing down on you and coming out. Um, and another one is I used to just go nonverbal, like silent, when I couldn't, you know,
Mhm.
I still do when it just becomes too much to process all the all the things around me.
Sure. So when you say nonverbal, it well, it's kind of a two-part question. Do you physically feel these things? Does your body feel it? Like it's painful? And then when you go nonverbal, can you explain that to the listeners? Is that more of you just going silent, or can you physically not get the words out?
It is the latter.
Okay.
It is physically demanding to get the words out. Um, yeah, it takes a level of effort that I would compare to like lifting weights. And for it is physical. It's also kind of difficult to describe because another symptom of autism is I'm so bad at pronouncing this word, so I'm not even going to try, but it's like
Okay.
it's a bad interoception, like a poor interoception, which is like the ability to know and communicate what's going on within one's body.
Mm.
There are jokes about like, um, like holding in your pee for like hours because you just don't realize you need to go, like in
Mhm.
the autistic community, which I know is kind of strange, but yeah, that's like, and so yeah, it's when meltdowns happen, it's like those emotions are now refusing to, or demanding, I should say, to be like felt, but then it's also really
Mhm.
difficult to know what they are or why it's happening.
No, thank you for that. That does make sense. So thank you for describing that. Um, I I don't want to take away from the part of the answer where I asked you about your creative work, because I know that you're very
Oh,
creative. So I want to take something positive from your experiences that you just explained, which to be honest, it does sound painful. And with you being so young and not knowing, and then of course the gap between you and your parents and them not knowing, that had to be very, very painful, emotionally, physically, just exhausting. But at the same time, I also hear that your autism and ADHD has allowed you to to be able to pay attention to certain details that. And I lost the word. Tell me, is it neurotypical? And then what is it?
yeah, neurodiverse and neuro.
Neurodiverse. Okay. I just want to make sure I have the language correct.
You
So
can
it's
also say autistic and allistic.
okay. Autistic. I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah.
I've not ever heard of allistic.
hmm It's just
So,
people without autism.
okay. Well,
Sorry.
thank you. No, no, no. This is great. I'm learning too. So thank you so much for being able to define that for us. So with you having certain attention to detail that allistics may not have, how has that influenced your creativity? Where has that been able to express itself to where it makes you happy and to where you feel productive?
I am, okay, not to brag, but I'm like pretty good at writing,
Yeah.
especially like essay writing for some reason. But yeah,
Well, the answers you get, I'm telling you, it was so impressive. Like that's a questionnaire
oh,
that I will forever keep because of
oh,
the language that you use and just how detailed you were. I think I told you this yesterday. I was showing my wife and I said, I'm actually really intimidated to interview her. I said, look at this. So um, I think you should brag about that. You are a very good writer, and I've not seen any of your essay work. I've just seen a questionnaire, so I can only imagine what your essays are like. Sorry to interrupt you, but I wanted to compliment you there. But yeah, go ahead and speak about your writing.
yeah, thank you. I'm, yeah, pretty adept, I guess. And it also, I started writing poetry probably around like 15, and I wouldn't say that that was like it was just such an outlet, I guess, for me. And another way that mental health struggles have showed up for me in creative ways is I was thinking about this today is acting. And when I don't know, like this, when you're masking and you're kind of like trapping a lot of your internal world under the surface in order to like move out in the outer world, there's a lot there, for lack of a better word. Um, and so I can tap into that when I'm acting, and not only is it freeing, but it's empowering too, and it's letting people see a side of me that is typically not able to be expressed fully, um, through a medium that is like much more socially acceptable, if you will.
Is that because you know that you're acting?
Mhm.
Mhm. Have you ever thought about what that would feel like to just be every day in that social setting?
Yes. And there are I'm lucky enough to have people in my life who hold that space for me. And so I know what it feels like too. It doesn't make it any less hard though. It but Yeah.
That's great. I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you have people like that in your life that could allow you to be yourself. That's great. So the next question I have is, it goes back to the questionnaire. You describe your mental health journey as being shaped by both chaos and clarity. What did those turning point at the ages you mentioned back at 22 and 23, what did that teach you about healing as far as the chaos and clarity?
That, I mean, a thing that I've learned just in general is that healing is, nonlinear. And I think everybody says it, but it's so true. And like you can have a really terrible day, filled to the brim with struggles. And then the next is, just a reminder of, why you're here. And so, whereas like two steps backwards, one step forward, it's all about perspective. I think too, and I'll probably just keep reiterating this, but a big thing is self-trust. And, um, I remember at one point I was a part of an outpatient program at that time I told you when I, left the service industry and was kind of like working through this prolonged period of burnout. And I was seeing a therapist at a time who recommended outpatient just for more, it's like a 4-hour program a day just for more support, right? And at this point, I had suspected that I was on the spectrum, and I had done a ton of research, and I had all these like questionnaires over months, right? And I brought them to this psychiatrist that I was supposed to meet with there, and propose it to her. And I just remember in like the first 5 or 10 minutes of talking to me, she was like, "You don't have autism." And yeah, I I was just like, okay, I'm done. Like, I don't want any more like diagnoses. I don't want any medication. I'm just like done. I'm going to figure this out for myself with what I know to be true. And that's what I have. That's my experiences. And so I think a big thing is just, yeah, trusting yourself and advocating for yourself,
Where did
even
that
when it's
courage come from? So sorry to interrupt, but where did that courage come from to trust yourself?
uh, frustration. I want to say like somewhere deep inside of me, like it had
Yeah.
just been like sitting there. Just, yeah, it frustration and disappointments, I guess. And just, yeah, being like, I'm done. Yeah. I think a lot too, God, of course. Um, yeah.
Yeah. The the outpatient experience. I know you described a little bit about it, but do you think it was overall helpful? And are you glad that you were able to go through that because it helped you build the trust in yourself?
Yeah. It was illuminating for sure.
That's
Yeah.
good.
I don't think I would have been like pushed to the point of, just figuring out what worked for me
Mhm.
without someone telling me what that should be without that experience.
Can I ask you another question about that experience?
Hmm.
With with you being told that, hey, look, it's not this, and you knowing that it was a level of that, how did it how did it influence, I guess, a relationship between you and your parents? Because I imagine that they had some frustration too, in wanting to help you. So being a parent myself, I could only imagine out of the desire of wanting to know what was going on, I think I would be tempted to want to go with what the doctors were saying.
Mhm.
But at the same time, it's more important to be able to trust my child. So, did you see any conflict uh, in your parents at, at that at that stage?
Actually, no, not sur surprisingly, gratefully. I think my parents I think that that time period was extremely hard on them. It was very hard for them to see me in so much pain and like confusion and not getting any sort of like answers from people that were effective at, dispelling that. And I think it would have been different had that psychiatrist, taken my suspect in earnest. But because it was kind of immediately dismissed, it's just more salt in the wound. And I think that they really just empathized with me there and wanted me to get support that wasn't like dismissive or like diagnostic in nature. I know I was seeking a diagnosis, but I guess clinical, I should say,
Mhm.
versus like collaborative.
And how long after your experience with the outpatient program did you have to wait until you finally were able to get somebody to truly listen to you and that truly wanted to help you?
Yeah, I actually didn't seek any more. I went to therapy, but I didn't seek any more psychiatric care.
Okay.
Yeah, at that point, I was just like, I'm done. I know what I know to be true, and I'm going to be moving forward and operating as if it is, because it is, as far as I can explain it, you know?
Yeah.
Um, it wasn't until I started school again, at college that I started having like sensory issues coming up again and like um difficulties with work, and that pushed me to seek a diagnosis. Um, so it was like a year and a half later, or no, yeah. It would have been like a year later that I actually got the official diagnosis, but I didn't. The support just came naturally as I supported myself, I guess.
That's
Does that
great.
make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then your therapist, have you had the same therapist now for a while?
No, at that time I did. I had like a consistent therapist for like a year and a half. Um, and after I got diagnosed, I started seeing a therapist that like specialized in autism. But I wouldn't say, I mean, talk therapy just hasn't always been the best fit for me, you know? Um, Journaling is a big thing that helps me. Movement is a big thing that helps me. And I would say it sounds so like basic, but it's so real. It's just like eating healthy, getting sleep. Like, I don't know, these like having consistent routines, I guess. So it's kind of different for me. And I imagine there are other people out there as well. But yeah, I've been looking into like somatic therapy, but I haven't yet started it or found someone who does that work.
Can you tell us what that is?
Yes, it is therapy that is focused on bodily sensations. So
Okay.
if I were to be like I'm feeling sad, the follow-up question is like, well, where in your body are you feeling that? And so it's
Mhm.
like it's supposed to help you feel your feelings.
Be able to identify them,
Yeah.
name them.
Hmm.
That's great. Have you always journaled, or is that something that you came into a little later?
I've always journaled.
Mhm.
Yeah. I got my first one when I was like 6.
Oh, that's cool. And do you still have them?
I still had them for a very long time, but I just recently threw uh, a lot of the older ones out because they were taking up a bunch of space.
You needed to make room for the new ones, right?
Yeah.
As far as the somatic therapy, does stemming help with that? Just kind of a natural level of somatic therapy?
Yeah.
And what do you
Uh,
do?
well,
If that's okay to ask, I'm
yeah, I
sorry.
have
Oh,
like this. It's like a rock.
okay.
Just been kind of just like fiddling with it as we've been talking. Stimming helps more so with anxiety and um, processing issues as like a in the moment thing
Okay.
in most moments.
Do you go straight to stemming? Is it natural or is it take a conscious effort?
It's natural.
So that's built in. So that I would say that's a benefit. That's a protective measure.
It's kind of just yeah, it's
Yeah.
a part of having autism.
Mhm. Okay.
Yeah.
In your experience, what are some of the biggest misconceptions people have about autism, especially in women or AFAB people?
I think one of the biggest misconceptions about autism is that it is has a singular presentation, and very there's that very typical that guy on Big Bang Theory, Sheldon. You know who I'm talking about?
Yes,
I don't know his full name because I don't watch that show.
but I love Sheldon.
Yeah, he's like autism coded,
Uh,
um, kind of distant and nerdy, but has these like super skills, super
mhm.
knowledge, and that's really not always the case. So yeah, I think
Is that a misconception, you think? Is that what you're saying?
yeah, and
Mhm.
obviously there are people with autism who are just like that, and then there are tons who aren't, and so yeah, I think that stereotype around it can prevent it from being diagnosed and or being seen in people. I would say too, there is, yeah, I think it's uh, I think too that I think there are a lot of things that people who don't have autism struggle with that are like autistic symptoms,
Mhm.
and so therefore I think there's a misconception that it would be hard to accommodate to those, or
Mhm.
it's like unnecessary, but it's like actually a lot of people struggle with these things who aren't autistic, and so maybe the issue is that we have this standard of like perfect mental health that no one is ever achieving, and you know
Mhm.
stretching our idea of like what is acceptable,
Mhm.
I think would be beneficial to everyone, even people without mental illnesses
I
or
would agree.
disabilities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of the misconceptions too that people have is maybe defining autism as only being nonverbal, as
Yeah.
far as the symptoms. I know I've come across people who have not argued or anything, but they've just questioned like, "Oh, I didn't know that person was autistic," but they speak. And so it seems like there is a big misconception that,
Yeah,
yeah, that
yeah,
it's all just nonverbal, and that's not true at
right.
all.
Yeah, I think going off of that or building off of that too, it's there. You know how a lot of people will sometimes use the terms like high functioning or low functioning
Yes.
to
Hmm.
just like, so low functioning, it's like you are somebody who's nonverbal, who needs help in almost like every executive daily task. But a more like appropriate terminology is like high support needs or low support needs. So I'm somebody with low support needs. I still need I still need accommodations. I still need help, right? But not not to the point where I can't live independently. And some
Hmm.
people, like some autistic people, can't. And so yeah, I think reframing it not as like high functioning or low functioning, but like what level of support do you need is more appropriate, as well as yeah, kind of like understanding that autism is not just a behavioral, it does show up behaviorally in behaviors, but it's a kind of it's like a neurological di difference.
So, do you think that those with autism are more sensitive and compassionate towards others, even those who are nonverbal? And I'm not sure if I asked that the right way.
Yeah, what do you mean?
As far as the connection they have with people. Eh,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, because there is a misconception that people, like autistic people, don't like lack empathy.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I would say that that is not necessarily defined or determined by whether or not you have autism. You know, some people have a
Okay.
more compassionate disposition than others, and they might also have autism. So I do think that it can, you know, um, for me personally, I'm super kind of, and this is something I struggle with too, just being hyper aware of, you know, people's tone or like body language, which is not a typical autistic trait, you know. I mean, it's in the DSM-5 that that people, if you're on the spectrum, you lack some sort of like social understanding of cues and such. But masking and needing to mask, feeling like I had to mask, um, part of that was, you know, understanding social cues and understanding them well enough to emulate them or replicate them. Um, so it does that make me more compassionate? Maybe, but it's not. But like I don't know, you know.
Well, I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why I asked that. Maybe I should have prefaced this before asking the question. I have a nephew he's 12, almost 13. He lives in California, and uh, he was diagnosed very early on with nonverbal autism. I don't know a whole lot about his diagnosis, just for the distance between us geographically. But every time I've ever seen him, there's this bond that he and I have that
Mhm.
it doesn't seem like he has with anybody else. Now that could just be me and the amount of love that I have for him, and maybe I just am biased and think that. But at the same time, I can tell that there's a connection there between us that I'll be honest, I don't even have with my own children, and he doesn't speak. So it's it's hard for me to understand. Now I'm not always trying to figure out why that is. Like when I'm with him, I'm with him, and we can just lay there or sit there, and a lot of times he'll just lean his head to connect with my head. Um, and there's this level of comfort that he experiences with me and I with him. And it's just really special. So I just didn't know what, what, what that is, if where that connection's coming from, I guess, because with all the misconceptions out there, with him being nonverbal, it's hard for me to understand that, I guess, that he could comprehend that as far as a connection. So
Mm.
what do you think that is? Or is that just us being connected?
I- Yeah, I think so. There's research on um, autistic brains uh, that show different connectivity pathways between neurons, and yeah, that it increases levels of sensitivity to like the external world. And so I think it's like perhaps like an element of that in general. Okay, and then yeah,
I'm fine with not being able to understand that, to be honest, because it's so unique and so special, but it's also very humbling. It's, what is it about me that he feels so safe with? What, he, yeah, go
you
ahead.
know how I think people people are like different frequencies on a radio channel, if you will, and sometimes other people are tuned into the same one that you're in,
Mm.
and that can be really great when um yeah, you're like, just when you're not being authentic, there you're getting people who are not matching your frequency, and then when you are, you're getting people who are, and then it's great, and it's fantastic. And yeah, I don't know, I feel like you guys are probably just on the same frequency.
Yeah, and that would make sense. I mean, with, I'm 41 years old, he's 12, but the level of peace that I feel around him is unparalleled, and I can confidently say that he feels that with me,
Yeah.
and and he doesn't speak. It's the most miraculous thing I think I've ever experienced, next to the birth of my own children. But it's just really special. So I didn't know. This is actually the first time I've been able to ask that question, uh, in anticipation of a definitive answer. But I'm completely okay with, like I said, not knowing the exact why. But I think you gave it to me, the frequency, that I've not thought of that. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Uh, that's interesting. Well, thanks for helping me understand that better. I appreciate that. So we'll move on to the next couple of questions, because I don't want to take up all your time, but I do thank you for the time that you've given us so far. In your questionnaire, and you've actually mentioned joking a few times in this interview, so I really want to learn more about that. You joke about collecting diagnosis like Thanos collects Infinity Stones, which I love that reference. But how has humor helped you cope or connect with others in your mental health journey?
I think humor is a means of relatability. So like um between people who have shared experiences, it's and you're kind of first meeting, testing the waters too is like, you know, joking, um, and being like, yeah, hey, I've been through that too. And I think humor is sometimes a way of like signaling that. And so in that way, it is a medium of connection. And then I also think humor makes heavy things light and easier to carry when you can laugh about it, and not like you're making fun of it, but you're like laughing
Mhm.
in spite of it or with it. And it just helps to ease the tension.
Yeah. You're close friends. that you can be yourself around? I imagine you guys laugh a lot.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, are these friends that can joke with you on that level, as far as, like you said, maybe in spite of the diagnosis, or like do they have that permission?
I have two friends who are autistic as well,
Okay.
so there are plenty jokes about that. And yeah, and sometimes humor can be a defense mechanism too. So it's like
Yeah.
important to recognize when you're laughing because you don't want to actually process or feel something, which is also hard to recognize. But yeah, I think there too much of a good thing can be a bad thing, right? But in those moments
Yeah.
when it has all been processed and said and done, it's fun to have a little joke about it if you're comfortable with it, you know.
Yeah. I like what you just said, and I wonder if the journaling probably has a lot to do with helping that, as far as you saying, too much of something cannot necessarily be good, right? It could be a bad thing. And
Mhm.
when you're able to process that and unpack that, I'm sure you do a lot of that in your journaling. Would that be safe to say?
Yeah, I also think I thought for so long that like I spent a lot of time like actively trying to heal, and at some point I was like, man, I've I've done the work. Like I
Yeah.
just gotta go. I just gotta
Good.
like jump into something and test it because there's only so much that can be done like on the pages of a journal, right? Or in in that active kind of healing work. And then you have to go and test it and do it
Mhm.
again. And so that's also what I mean when I think that healing is cyclical versus linear.
Yeah, that's really powerful what you just said. Getting off the journal and putting things into action, just jumping out there. That just you are one of the most and just courageous young people I've ever met. I mean, I can't just because this is all coming from inside of you and your desire to heal. Like nobody's standing over you saying, "Hey, Kirsten, do this, do that." Like it's you wanting to do this stuff.
Mhm.
I just the amount of courage that takes, I don't know that I've ever experienced, and I'm almost twice your age. I don't. Do you think a lot of that is instilled from your? Of course, your relationship with God, absolutely. But does a lot of that come from your upbringing, your parents, as far as just being a strong woman?
Mm, yeah,
Yeah.
I used to dress myself in the tackiest clothes ever. I mean, it was fun. I was like self-expressing, but it's because my mom like always let me dress myself in the morning instead of like picking out clothes for me. Like my parents were very supportive of who I am and figuring
Yeah.
that out for myself and expressing that for myself. I think this podcast is um, embodied courage too. I just wanted to say that about you. Like, yeah, I
Oh,
think what you're doing with this and your work in general is very courageous as well.
thank you. I really appreciate that. It doesn't always feel that way, so I thank you for that. That means a lot. But it's kind of a two-part question, and then we'll wrap up. What message do you want to send to others, especially neurodivergent creatives who are still trying to figure out who they are in a world that completely misunderstands them?
I think trusting yourself over self-acceptance over external validation always. And like the world doesn't need a perfect version of you. They just need an honest one. And yeah, also you don't like need a diagnosis to start the work, and the work doesn't have to be the only thing, you know. Sometimes it's healing to like go to the movies with your friend because you just, you know. So yeah, I think for creative work in general, just kind of going with the flow instead of forcing it, you know, attuning to yourself.
I'm learning a lot from you.
That's
about
awesome.
myself, actually. I'm going to have a lot of reflection to do after this conversation.
That's super cool.
Yeah, you're going to impact a lot of people with your story. Like I was telling you yesterday over the phone, what you're speaking about, Kirsten, is going to change people's lives. I do believe that, and you've got so much ahead of you too. And if this was your last opportunity to speak on this topic ever, and you were speaking to a group, I mean, you envision it however you see fit. But if this was your last opportunity to speak, what would you say to that group? And then the second part of that is, if you had the chance to speak to your younger self when you started experiencing these symptoms and not knowing what would you say to your younger self?
Um, to my younger self, I would tell her you're you are not making it up. Like what you're going through is very real. Um, and I would say ask for help.
Mm.
It's so hard sometimes, but it's like you do it and then you're like, that was not hard at all actually. And that's exactly what I needed. So and I think that I would tell that to, the group of people too.
Mhm.
The last thing I would just ask for help, just reach out.
Yeah, I agree. It's something that, unfortunately, the stigma associated with mental health has been responsible for people not wanting to ask for help.
Right.
Uh, so I think it's important that everybody who listens to these podcasts recognizes the necessity of asking for help. Suffering in silence we've all done it for far too long, and the whole reason for this platform is to give people a voice, to encourage others to speak up and to ask for help, which you are contributing to. And one day I do believe that the stigma will be completely eradicated. I do believe that the conversation will have normalized in my lifetime as far as giving attention to mental health just as much as people give attention to physical health.
Mhm.
So I would agree with you 100%, on how you answered that two-part question, just to ask for help.
Yeah.
Kirsten, I thank you so much, and I know that so many people are going to be giving me feedback on this episode, and with your permission, I'll pass that on to you. I think it would be very encouraging for you to hear what people have to say in response to this episode. I do think that you're going to change lives, and you're only 24 years old. Like it's incredible what you've gone through, what you're doing, and congratulations, by the way, you just graduated with your associates,
Thank you.
which it's a big deal. And then, what are you doing next for school?
I don't know yet. Um, I'm looking at a couple of colleges though. Let's just say TBD.
Okay.
But it will happen.
Yeah.
I would really like to get a degree. Like I will have a degree. I'd like to get a 4 year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, when you decide that, you let me know, and we'll have you back, uh, to give us an update. You're going to be somebody that people are going to want to keep up with, if that's okay with you, just with the amount of people you're going to encourage. So, and we're all going to be rooting for you, with everything that you just told us, and we want to keep up with you. We want to support you, and we want to be your biggest fans, and I hope you're okay with that.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Okay. Well, one more thing before we go to, I know I've said that two or three times now. Do you have any resources that people could look into, as far as maybe them wanting to further seek understanding of what autism is?
Yes. There is a book, Unmasking Autism by
Hmm.
Devin Price, I believe, which is a great resource. It also has more resources inside of it. Yes, Unmasking Autism by Devin Price.
Okay.
Just wanted to make sure. And um, I know this is maybe silly to other people, but who cares? For me, a huge thing for me was like online forums of people who also had autism, and just like hearing their experiences and being like, yeah, I'm not alone in this.
I'll send you an email and I'll ask you for a few resources, and then we can put that in the show note.
Okay, yeah, because
Yeah,
I know I have them.
sure. Yeah, we'll give you a chance to let us know about those before I release the video. So yeah, and like I said, we'll put those in the show notes for people to access. Okay, well, Kirsten, I can't thank you enough. You know,
You too.
I yeah, you did a great job with this interview. I know that took a lot out of you, and I know it took a lot of courage. So thank you for what you did. And just know that we're rooting for you, and we look forward to catching up with you on down the road. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you.